And good evening and welcome to a live stream from home. It's been quite a while since I've done a live stream from home. Hopefully this is working. It's a new setup here on Facebook, so let's see what's happening here. It's showing that we've got video, it's showing that we've got audio, so that's pretty good. So we've gone live. Didn't quite start off the way that I thought it might, but anyway, we live and learn. Now this live stream I'm doing tonight, because this would be a live stream that I wanted to do tomorrow morning on my bicycle live stream, something that I'm a little bit more used to doing. I haven't done one from home for quite a while, but with the restrictions that came into force this afternoon with the 3-day lockdown, with exercising only being allowed up to 10 kilometres from your home, I thought I'm not going to go for a small bike ride in the morning. I'll probably just go for a walk. So what I've done is I'm going to do tomorrow's live stream tonight, and I hope you join me and find out some interesting information. And it's a little bit different for me to do it this way. Doing the live streams on the bicycles flow better for me. They just, it's just something that frees up my creative side and allows me to express better. So I've done some notes for tonight. And this was meant to be a scheduled live stream. I don't know why it didn't start at 9 o'clock like it was meant to, so I've just done it manually. So anyway, I think I can see where comments will come up if there are comments there. So and welcome for those that are coming on board. So it's the last day of July 2021. Wow, so it's amazing, isn't it? Tonight's live stream is called Dear Conspiracist, we need to talk about your self-centered agenda. Now, if you're a conspiracist, you may consider this live stream to be somewhat of an intervention, a need to shake you up in the same way that we need to shake up all those people that are still using and abusing animals. And sadly, as it turns out, conspiracists and non-vegans share more similarities than you realize. Both refuse to admit to their self-centered agenda. Now, by the way, I'm reading notes here because, as I say, when I'm riding the bicycle and doing these live streams on the bike, I tend to be freer. When I'm here in my office, it tends to be a bit more structured, so I've written out some notes here because it doesn't flow as easily when I'm not out in my natural environment. So let's start off by saying that a few years ago an experiment was performed where a group of people were told to wait in a park outdoors, and they were not told what was going to happen. They were just told to stand there and just wait. Now, there were hidden cameras, a lot of hidden cameras set up around them, and there were also some actors among them as well. A situation was staged where an actor would rush into the park, grab a handbag off another actor, and then sort of, there'd be a bit of a struggle, and then that actor would run out of the park. So the people that were told to wait in the park were not aware that this was going to happen. They were just told to go there and stand there, and something was going to happen. So this was a surprise. So a thief has raced into the park, from their eyes, raced in the park, grabbed someone's handbag and raced off. So it's what happened next that is really, really interesting and helps tie into talking about self-centered agendas. So in this group of people in the park, afterwards, they were independently interviewed on camera to give descriptions of the perpetrator, the thief of the handbag, and to give a description of the person who had the handbag stolen from them. And if I remember correctly, actually, the person who had the handbag stolen, which was an actor, ran off after the actor who had stolen the handbag. So people were interviewed, and they were interviewed to give a description. It's a very simple scenario. You're waiting in the park, you see somebody race in, they steal somebody's handbag, they race off, and the person whose handbag was stolen races after them. You're asked afterwards, as you would be by the police, to give a description of the person that stole the handbag and the person that the handbag was stolen from. But this is where it got really, really interesting. The variety of descriptions given, they varied from whether the person was male or female, their height, their build, what they were wearing, and, just as you can imagine, a great variety of descriptions of this person. And yet, how is that possible? Think about it. How is it possible? These people not only gave, these people that were standing in the park, not only gave a great variety of descriptions of something that could only be described one way, which was the color of the clothes the person was wearing, the height of the person, the build of the person, etc. Not only did they give varied and inaccurate descriptions, but they were so convinced that they were right. They were so convinced that they swore, said, I would swear on a Bible, I will go to court that this person was definitely wearing a red shirt, black pants, whatever the description was they gave. After they'd been interviewed on camera saying, we will go to court, I'm absolutely adamant this is what the thief was wearing, they were then shown the footage of what the thief was wearing. And almost across the board, everyone's like, oh wow, I could have sworn that person was wearing such and such and that. So, okay, so what we had was a really, really, really interesting example of how unreliable our senses are, how ridiculously unreliable our senses are, how easily fooled we are with the most basic situation that's happening right in front of our eyes. This was a perfect example of how we cannot trust our limited senses to give us information on an event that we have witnessed personally and that we are giving a description of only a short while later. So the conclusions that we make when we stake our life on them, are not reliable, they're not consistent, and they're not trustworthy. That's what this setup was able to show. What we also have learned from this is that we look for confirmation bias. We look for information that favors our existing beliefs. But we must remember that correlation doesn't imply causation. Now, I know that's a little bit, it's a little bit, I want to repeat that. So we look for confirmation bias, we look for information that favors our existing beliefs, but correlation doesn't imply causation. So just because we see things that appear to be connected doesn't mean that one is the cause of the other. Now, all of this is coming into play with the conspiracists' agenda. So, also, just while we're talking about that setup in the park and how easily fooled we are, I highly recommend, if you've never seen it, a Netflix series called Brain Games. It is fascinating how, again, it week after week, or episode after episode, when you watch it, it just proves how our senses are so unreliable, so easily fooled, and how we really don't know what's going on in the most simple optical illusions or other type of illusions. And this is very, very important when conspiracies are formed, because we are so unreliable that we are working with a computer up here that is doing garbage in, garbage out, basically. So we're using limited information that our senses can retain or bring in, putting it into a computer and not getting the correct conclusions out. So what happens if our beliefs are founded on a need to blame others rather than to take personal responsibility? And what happens if we have a reluctance or a refusal to change? So we want to, if our beliefs are founded on a need to blame others rather than taking personal responsibility, and we are reluctant to or refuse to change, what happens is we unintentionally or intentionally develop an agenda to suit our beliefs. So the theorist actually has two agendas, and this is where I have an issue with a conspiracist. I should have said the conspiracist has two agendas. This is where I have an issue with conspiracists, and that is the fact that they do actually have an agenda. They're always going on about agendas, and but they won't admit to their own agenda. Their own agendas, the two of them most prominent, are that they don't want to be controlled, and that's really, really obvious when you look at their behavioral traits. They don't want to be controlled. That comes up all the time. And they need to believe in something to keep their mind alive. Or keep their mind active. They need to believe in something. This is like food to them. It's like, we've got to believe in something, and they will almost fight to their death to convince you that what they believe in is correct. Now, 2 years ago, and I've talked about this before, a year ago I talked about this. 2 years ago, a meta-analysis of 92 peer-reviewed studies systematically reviewed conspiracy theorists and their theories. So it was 92 peer-reviewed psychological studies. It discovered in indisputable science that the personality traits of a conspiracist feature paranoia, fear, anxiety, low self-esteem, neuroticism, mistrust or mistrusting authority, lower education, a feeling of disconnection from society, etc., etc. This was in 92 peer-reviewed studies. It's indisputable science, and I did a live stream about it in more detail a year ago in September 2020, which you can watch on my YouTube channel. So, knowing that, what happens when someone is reluctant to change, blames others rather than taking personal responsibility, and these traits, these features, these behavioral traits are combined with an unhealthy paranoia. I don't think there is such a thing as a healthy paranoia. Unhealthy paranoia and a mistrust of others in authority. What happens is simply this: the perfect conspiracist agenda is born. So under the guise of critical thinking or informed consent, the conspiracist looks for information to confirm his paranoia and mistrust. Whether he's aware that he's doing it or not, this is how it comes out. But he calls it critical thinking or informed consent, when it is in fact paranoia and mistrust. His confirmation bias will prove to himself how right he is. His confirmation bias colors how he interprets the limited information he is possible to receive through his senses. And then he gets on his soapbox to convince the world that he is right. So the conspiracist is sincere, but often sincerely wrong, sincerely incorrect. Now, because of his confirmation bias, a conspiracist has a tendency to make incorrect conclusions based on the limited information that he's aware of. The non-vegan, for instance, will conclude the pandemic must have come from a lab, because that's how a non-vegan is going to think. They're not going to think along the lines of treating animals with respect and compassion. Whereas the vegan will understand that the pandemic is another zoonotic disease, and it's yet more evidence that using animals is not only killing them, but it's killing us. And, almost daily I see simple examples of people taking information and making wrong conclusions from it. In the eyes of a conspiracist, for instance, here's a couple of recent local examples in the last week. Recently installed cameras on the side of the highway were apparently, in the eyes of a conspiracist, were apparently phone camera detectors. You see if you're using your phone. Sorry if that's going out of focus. I don't know why my camera does that, my U-Butte 4K camera. So these cameras were apparently phone camera detectors, when it turned out, of course, that they weren't. They were actually number plate recognition cameras for people not wearing seatbelts. And even when that information was shared from the Department of Main Roads onto a forum to let people know that that's what the cameras are for, people were still coming back and going, no, I don't believe that. That's just a really, really simple, basic example. Another one just came up a couple of days ago with a footpath that's being built locally, not far from where I live. And it's being built for a safe access for kids to go to the local school. But that wasn't good enough for the conspiracists, who concluded that couldn't possibly be the reason. The reason must be because there's going to be a massive retirement village must be going to be built there, and that's woe, and all the, oh, how dare they do that, and all the rest. Why would somebody conclude something that's actually the opposite of what is actually going on, of what is actually being said, of what is actually being told, of what is actually being, a simple example like that. It's a footpath being built to the school. It's nothing else other than that. Why would a conspiracist think it's something else other than that? Because mistrust of authority, paranoia, fear, etc., etc. And the agenda. We come back to this agenda. So this is where I have a problem with this agenda, and I'll just go back to remind you of the conspiracist agenda. It is needing to blame others, not taking personal responsibility, and this unhealthy paranoia and mistrust of others in authority. So once you have that recipe there, whoops, we're going out of focus again. The conspiracist is just like, whoa, it can't possibly be true. Can't believe it, because there's this mistrust. There's this paranoia. There's nothing is real enough for the conspiracists. So I was taught from a very young age, thanks to my father, to not just take things on face value. I was taught to look for the reasons behind why things happen. And in time, that became the foundation of my spiritual quest. However, I wasn't taught to create false conclusions. I wasn't taught to, look at the world and go, well, the world's obviously flat because that's all I can see. I was just taught to look at the reasons behind why things happen, not to, make some really distorted conclusions. And it's the ridiculous conclusions, the ridiculous speculation that that has people believing that the world is flat, or that lizard people hide among us. These sadly, these are insane ideas, and yet people believe them. And why? Well, just read the peer-reviewed study of the meta-analysis of the 92 peer-reviewed studies. What we're talking about, the paranoia, the mistrust, and that people, conspiracists, cannot believe the most obvious of things. So I'm going to start winding up. I would have more respect for the average conspiracist, and this includes the ones that I know personally and have known personally, who have taught me a lot about how conspiracists think, and have taught me a lot about how they mistrust authority, and how they don't like being told what to do, and how they get angry very easily when people don't believe their agenda. I would have more respect for those sort of people, for the average conspiracists, if they admitted to their own agenda, that they don't want to be told what to do, that they don't trust authority, that they just want to do whatever they want to do, even if it means breaking the law, even if it means, whatever they want to do. They don't want to be told what to do. I'd have more respect for them, and they would have more credibility if they actually knew that about themselves and they admitted that to themselves. But because they don't, they carry their opinion based on their limited senses and their usually incorrect conclusions, carries so little credibility that most of the information that I'm sent from people that supposedly know what's going on in the world, I just look at and just go, no, sorry, but you're way off track. So let me finish by saying thank you for watching this live stream, and let me just say, dear conspiracist, your paranoid agenda is actually ruining your health, your peace of mind, and is ruining our world. And I wind up now with a comment from Yana, who says, I really don't trust a lot of politicians. I suppose there are some decent, hardworking ones with integrity, but then again, and Yana, I agree with that. Having personally known a few politicians, worked with them in my previous business, yeah, I have very little respect for the majority of them. And Andrew says, conspiracist or brain dead lobotomized MK Ultra has definitely worked, Harry. No more mock manufactured meats or tap water for you. Great comment there, Andrew. Can count on you for a really good comment. Thank you guys for watching. Let's not only live vegan and save lives, but actually live vegan and save each other and save ourselves from this pandemic, because this is what we need to address. And we are doing a disservice to animals if we don't keep making people aware that the only way to solve this shithole that we're in now is to stop using animals for any reason whatsoever. So thank you for watching. Good night and ahimsa.